By the middle of August, the pepper plant by the back steps has quit on you. The leaves have gone the color of a paper grocery sack, curling at the edges, and the few blossoms it managed to open last week dropped off without ever setting a single pepper. You've been watering it. You've been out there every evening with the hose, and it's dying anyway. And most folks right about here go get the trowel and put it out of its misery and tell themselves it just wasn't the year for peppers. Hold off on the trowel, because the people who study the exact hour a plant gives up, the ones who put dying roots under a microscope, keep finding the same thing. That plant is almost never finished. It's starving. It's run clean out of one or two things. The dirt in that bed can't hand it anymore. And starving is a thing you can fix. Fast. Sometimes inside 2 days. There are 5 liquids that will do it. And every one of them costs you nothing. Because every one of them is something you already carry out to the trash or pour down the drain without a second thought. The lawn and garden industry quietly walked away from all 5 of them a long time ago. For one plain reason. There's no money in a jug of something you already own. The first one is sitting in a pot on your stove right now, and you're about to pour it down the sink. Let's start there. Here's a question worth sitting with the next time you drain a pot of potatoes into the sink. Where do you think all the good in a vegetable goes when you boil it? You've noticed it, even if you never thought hard about it. Boil a pot of greens or potatoes or green beans, and the water turns cloudy and colored and smells like the vegetable itself. That color and that smell are not nothing. That's minerals, pulled straight out of the food and into the water by the heat. Down south, the old folks had a name for the liquid left after cooking a mess of collards.
They drank
liquor.
It, sopped cornbread
they drank
in
it,
spooned it to
sopped
sick folks and new
cornbread in
mothers,
it,
because they knew
spooned
without
it to
any
sick
lab
folks
telling
and
them
new
that the
mothers,
strength of the greens
because
had
they
gone
knew
into the
without
water.
any lab telling them that the strength of the greens had gone into the water. Potassium, mostly. The mineral of fruiting plant burns through faster than any other, plus calcium and magnesium and a little iron. All of it water-soluble, all of it already dissolved and ready. A plant doesn't have to break a thing down to use it. It's in a form the roots can drink the minute it hits the dirt. So you save it. Every time you boil or steam vegetables or eggs or even the water from rinsing rice or soaking dried beans, you pour it into an old milk jug on the counter instead of down the drain. Let it cool all the way to room temperature first, always, because dumping hot water on roots is its own kind of killing. Once it's cool, it goes straight to the base of whatever's struggling. No mixing, no waiting. It's the fastest feed on this whole list. And the plainest. A woman I knew named Marguerite, up in the driftless country of Wisconsin, kept a chipped milk jug by her sink her whole life, and never once let a pot of potato water reach the drain. Her tomatoes were the envy of 3 counties, even the drought summer when everybody else's plants crisped up brown by the 4th of July. Ruth Stout, the old Connecticut gardener who spent 40 years telling people to quit working so hard and let the ground do its job, used to say the dirt would feed you if you'd only stop hauling its food to the dump. She meant mulch, mostly, but the idea is the same. You are pouring groceries down the drain every single night. Now here's the mistake, and it's a bad one, because it turns a helper into a poison. Salt. If you salted that cooking water, and most of us salt our potato water without thinking, you cannot give it to a plant. Salt in the dirt pulls water back out of roots and does the exact opposite of what you're after. It'll finish off a struggling plant faster than doing nothing at all. So the rule is simple. If you're saving the water for the garden, cook that pot unsalted and salt your food at the plate instead. Your blood pressure will thank you too, but that's another video. Same goes for water with a lot of butter or grease in it. Keep it clean. Plain vegetable or bean water, nothing added. And cold vegetable water only keeps about 3 days on the counter before it sours, so don't stockpile a week of it. Make it, cool it, use it, start fresh. You will never see a bottle of this on a store shelf, and you know why by now. Nobody can bottle the water you are about to throw out and sell it back to you for $4. That's the whole reason your grandmother knew about pot liquor and you didn't. Pot liquor feeds the plant tonight. But the next liquid doesn't feed the plant at all. It feeds the living things in the dirt that feed the plant. And to understand why that matters, You have to meet a man who won a Nobel Prize for digging in it. Back in the 1940s, at Rutgers over in New Jersey, a soil scientist named Selman Waksman got curious about why a spoonful of ordinary dirt could take a dead animal or a pile of leaves and make it vanish in a season, with no rot smell hanging around like you'd expect. He went looking in the dirt for what was doing the work, and what he found down there was a whole civilization of tiny living things, and among them a group that did something nobody expected. They made their own antibiotics, little chemical weapons the soil microbes use to fight off the germs that cause disease. One of them turned into streptomycin, the first real cure for tuberculosis, and it won Waksman the Nobel Prize. He pulled the first true antibiotic out of a shovelful of dirt. Sit with that a second, because here's what it means for your dying pepper. Healthy dirt is not just holding your plant up, it's defending it. The living things in good ground surround the roots and fight off the rots and wilts and blights that would otherwise take the plant down. When a plant collapses, half the time the dirt has gone quiet. The defenders have died back, and the roots are sitting there naked with nobody standing guard. You can send in reinforcements, and one of the best ways sits in your refrigerator right now, on top of a container of plain yogurt. That thin, cloudy liquid that pools on top, the stuff you usually pour off and throw away, is whey, and it's full of the same family of good bacteria. The lactic acid kind, that ferment your yogurt and your sauerkraut and your grandmother's crock of pickles. Those are exactly the sort of quiet, hard-working microbes that make dirt come alive. You don't pour it on straight. Whey is strong and a little acid, so you cut it way down, about a quarter cup of whey into a gallon of water. Stir it, and pour that around the base of the plant and out to the edges where the feeder roots run. Once every week or two is plenty. What you're doing is seeding the ground, the same way you drop a scoop of live culture into a fresh jar of milk to set the next batch of yogurt. The bacteria land in the dirt, find the sugars and scraps already there, and multiply into the millions. And the whole underground crew wakes back up and gets back to guarding the roots. Here's the memorable part, the thing I want you to write on the inside of the cabinet door. You are not doctoring the plant. You are rehiring the dirt. A sick plant in dead ground is a patient in an empty hospital. Put the staff back in the building, and most of the healing takes care of itself. Now the mistake. And it's an easy one. People grab the whey off a sweetened, flavored yogurt, the strawberry stuff with sugar and gum in it, and pour that on. Don't. You want the whey off plain, unsweetened yogurt, nothing else in it. Or the drippings from making your own. The other mistake is thinking more is better and pouring it on thick and undiluted, which just sours the ground and can burn tender roots. A little, watered down. Often. That's the whole trick with anything alive. The dirt life takes a week or two to build, but some plants are too far gone to wait, and they've got a different problem. And fixing it means understanding a 100-year-old rule about why more is almost never the answer. In 1909, a German scientist named Eilhard Mitscherlich ran the same experiment over and over with a stubborn patience that only a German scientist could manage. He'd give a plant a little of a nutrient and measure how much bigger it grew. Then a little more, and measure again. Then more, and more. And what he found became a law that every grower ought to have tattooed on the back of his hand, and almost no home gardener has ever heard of. The first dose does the most. The second dose does a little less. The third does less than that. Each spoonful you add gives back a smaller and smaller return until you reach a point where adding more does nothing at all, and then, if you keep going, it starts doing harm. They call it the law of diminishing returns, and Mitscherlich proved it in the dirt with real plants. More is not better. More is better only up to a line, and past that line more is worse, and most gardeners kill more plants by feeding too much than by feeding too little. Nowhere does this bite harder than with nitrogen, which is the nutrient a tired plant seems to want, and the one people reach for hardest. Nitrogen is the green-up nutrient. It's what makes leaves grow fast and dark. When a plant looks peaked, the natural instinct is to pour the nitrogen to it, and when a little helps, to pour on more. And here's where whole gardens get ruined every summer. Too much nitrogen and the plant throws all its strength into leaves and quits making fruit. You get a tomato plant 6 feet tall, dark green, gorgeous, and not one tomato on it. Push past that and the salts build up and scorch the roots brown, and the plant you were trying to save is dead of kindness. The right amount, gently, is a real rescue. And you can brew it for free out of the thing you bag up and set at the curb every Saturday. Grass clippings. Fresh green lawn clippings are loaded with nitrogen, more than almost any other free thing you've got. You fill a bucket a third of the way with fresh clippings, top it off with water, and let it sit 3 or 4 days, stirring when you walk past. It'll go green-brown and smell sharp, like a wet ditch in July. And that's exactly right. Strain it, cut it down about 1 part tea to 10 parts water, and pour it around the roots. But you go easy. This is the whole point of Mitscherlich. Once a week, well watered down, and you watch the plant. The minute the leaves come back green and new growth starts, you ease off. You are not trying to flood it. You're trying to hand it just enough and no more. Here's the quiet truth almost nobody says out loud, and it runs against everything a fertilizer bag ever taught us. The goal was never to feed the plant as much as possible. The goal is to feed it exactly enough. A plant is not a bucket you fill to the top. It's more like salting a soup. A little brings the whole thing to life, and one shake too many. And there's no fixing it, no taking it back out. Grass tea handles the plant that's hungry for one thing. But most collapsing plants aren't short just one nutrient. They're short 5 or 6 at once, in different amounts. And for that, you need something that covers the whole spread in a single pour. The old market growers had a brew like that, and it came out of the yard, not the kitchen. Every yard has it, that back corner or fence line where the weeds run wild, the stuff you fight all summer and haul to the burn pile. Those weeds are the richest free fertilizer on the whole place, and the old-timers knew it. They didn't fight the weeds so much as harvest them. Here's why. A weed like stinging nettle or a dandelion sends roots down deep and pulls up minerals from way below where your vegetable roots ever reach, and stores that wealth in its leaves. Different weeds mine different things. So a brew made of a good mix of them covers a broad spread all at once, which is exactly what a badly starved plant needs. Let me walk you through the bucket. You want a big double handful of stinging nettle first. If you can find it, wear gloves. It earns its name. Nettle is about the most nitrogen-rich weed there is, and it carries a heavy load of iron and magnesium. Besides, the very iron and magnesium a yellowing plant is often crying for. Then a few whole dandelions, dug up root and all. That long taproot is a mining drill. It hauls potassium and calcium up from down deep and packs it into the leaves. And potassium is the mineral that runs flowering and fruiting. So it's the one a plant that quits setting fruit needs most. Then a fat handful of clover or vetch, any of the pea family weeds. Those plants pull nitrogen right out of the air and store it in little nodules on their roots, free nitrogen, caught from the sky. They add a gentler, slower nitrogen to balance the nettle's fast punch. Then whatever else is growing that you know is safe, chickweed and plantain, the broadleaf odds and ends, for the trace minerals a plant needs in small doses. And last, 1 shovel of finished compost or a scoop of good dirt from under a healthy plant, tossed in to seed the whole bucket with the microbes that'll do the fermenting. Fill it with water, weight the greens down under an old plate so they stay under, and let it work about 2 weeks. I'll be honest with you. It is going to stink. Bad. Like something crawled in there and gave up. That reek is the smell of all those minerals breaking loose out of the leaves and into the water, and it means it's working. Strain it, cut it hard, 1 part brew to 20 parts water, and pour it at the roots. Now let me knock down a myth that's cost gardeners a lot of grief, because this is the spot people always ask about. Eggshells. You've heard 100 times to crush your eggshells into the dirt for calcium, to stop that black rot on the bottom of your tomatoes. Here's the truth. A dry eggshell is calcium locked up in a hard shell of the same stuff seashells and limestone are made of, and it breaks down so slowly that a shell you bury this spring is still sitting there mostly whole next spring. It gives your plant almost nothing this season. If you want calcium a plant can use now, you either grind those shells to a fine flour, finer than you'd think, or soak them in vinegar a few days to dissolve the calcium out into the liquid first. Whole crushed shells in the ground are a slow gift for some future garden, not a rescue for the plant that's dying today. Here's the mistake with the weed brew itself, and it's a costly one. Do not use weeds that have gone to seed. If those weeds have set their little seed heads, brewing them won't kill all the seeds, and you'll pour 1,000 new weeds into your beds and fight them for 3 years. Pull your weeds for this while they're young and green and lush, before they flower, and dilute hard. Poured on full strength, this brew will burn a plant as fast as it would have saved it. There's something older than any of this, though. Older than the bucket. Older than the grocery store, older than the coffee and bananas we throw around like they've always been here. A way of feeding dirt that a lost people worked out so well their fields are still rich 1,000 years later. And it starts with a handful of something black. In 1842, an Englishman named John Laws took a patent on something he called superphosphate, opened a factory, and started selling fertilizer in sacks. That's the year, near enough, that the world began buying its soil food in a bag instead of making it at home. Before that, every farm on Earth, from the hills of the Ozarks to the far side of the world, ran on the same two things. What the animals gave back and what the plants gave back. Nothing came in a sack because there were no sacks. There was only the old circle. Everything that grew went back into the ground to grow again. And some of those old people were better at it than we are. With all our sacks. Deep in the Amazon, hundreds of years ago, long before anybody there ever saw a factory, people made a black dirt so rich that their old garden grounds are still fertile today, 1,000 years on, while the wore-out fields around them turn to sand. Scientists have a name for it now, terra preta, the dark earth, and they spent years trying to work out the secret. The secret was black. Charcoal. A piece of charcoal. Those people worked burned wood and bones into the ground, and the char stayed, and it held. Here's what modern soil science finally figured out about why. A piece of charcoal, looked at close, is riddled with millions of tiny caves and channels, more surface tucked inside one lump than you'd believe. Water soaks into those caves and stays put. Nutrients cling to the walls instead of washing away in the next hard rain. And, best of all, the tiny living things we talked about move into those caves by the billions and set up house, safe and sheltered, a whole city built into a black crumb. A lump of charcoal in the dirt is a hotel for water, food, and the microbe crew, all at once. You can do it at home with hardwood charcoal, the plain kind. Never the briquettes with lighter fluid baked in. You crush it up small, and you soak it. And here is the one mistake that ruins it. Never put raw, fresh char straight into your dirt. Fresh char is bone dry and greedy, all those empty caves, and it'll suck the water and nutrients right out of your soil to fill itself up first and starve your plant for a season while it does. You have to charge it first. Soak the crushed char a week in some of that weed brew, or the old manure water, or even just fish tank water, until those caves are full, and then work it in. Charged char feeds. Raw char robs. Same black crumb. Opposite results, and the difference is a week of soaking. That's the last of the 5, and the oldest, and the one that outlasts all the rest, because a shovel of good charged char keeps working in your dirt for longer than you'll be gardening. Let me bring the whole thing home. So there they are, 5 liquids, not one of them from a store. The cooking water you were about to pour down the sink, saved for its potassium, the whey off your yogurt, to put the living things back in the dirt, grass-clipping tea, a careful little at a time, for nitrogen, a stinking bucket of fermented weeds, for everything all at once, and a handful of charged black char, the 1,000-year trick, worked in to hold it all in place. The next time a pepper quits on you, or a squash vine starts to fade in the August heat, don't reach for the trowel yet. Walk back to the kitchen instead, and look in the sink and the trash, and on top of the yogurt. The thing that plant is starving for is almost always something you were about to throw away an hour ago. That's the part that ought to stay with you. We've been trained to see all this as garbage, hauled off and gone, when it was food the whole time. Food our grandparents never once wasted because they couldn't afford to. If a neighbor of yours has been losing more plants than they save, pass this along before the season's out. It's the kind of knowing that only stays alive as long as somebody keeps saying it out loud. None of it was ever really garbage. It was food, the whole time waiting on somebody to carry it back.